Okay. I'm live. Fantastic. So good morning. It is a Thursday morning, and I am trying to go live, boop, online at the same time. So today we're reading Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. Beep, boop, boop. I am reading with you today some stories that I use in class, grad school, and in class, third grade art, preschool. I mean, I've taught all kinds of classes. And I also use them in therapy when I do therapy with small children or large children or advanced age children, couples, families. I do it all. And I, in my advanced years of my career, do so much more teaching and so much more talking about than I get to actually visit with some of my very favorite stories. Magic School Bus. Kids generally, they still really, really dig these. So we're going to start with Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. Sometimes we have them, don't we? Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day by Judith Viorst, illustrated by Ray Cruz. For Robert Lesher with love and thanks. Let's try this side, shall we? There we go. I went to sleep with gum in my mouth, and now there's gum in my hair. And when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on the skateboard by mistake, and I dropped my sweater in the sink while the water was running, and I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Excellent, excellent illustrations. I love it. At breakfast, Anthony found a Corvette Stingray car kit in his breakfast cereal box, and Nick found a junior undercover agent code ring in his breakfast cereal box. But in my breakfast cereal box, all I found was breakfast cereal. I think I'll move to Australia. In the carpool, Mrs. Gibson let Becky have a seat by the window. Audrey and Elliot got seats by the window too. I said I was being scrunched. I said I was being smushed. I said, if I don't get a seat by the window, I'm going to be car sick. No one even answered. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At school, Mrs. Dickens liked Paul's picture of the sailboat better than my picture of the invisible castle. At singing time, she said I sang too loud. At counting time, she said I left out 16. Who needs 16? I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I could tell because Paul said I wasn't his best friend anymore. He said that Philip Parker was his best friend and that Albert Moyo was his next best friend and that I was only his third best friend. I hope you sit on a tack, I said to Paul. I hope the next time you get a double-decker strawberry ice cream cone, the ice cream part falls off the cone part and lands in Australia. There were 2 cupcakes in Philip Parker's lunch bag, and Albert got a Hershey bar with almonds, and Paul's mother gave him a piece of jelly roll that had little coconut sprinkles on the top. Guess whose mother forgot to put in dessert? It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. That's what it was, because after school, my mom took us all to the dentist. And Dr. Fields found a cavity in just me. Come back next week and I'll fix it, said Dr. Fields. Next week, I said, I'm going to Australia. On my way downstairs, the elevator door closed on my foot. And while we were getting ready for my mom to go get the car, Anthony made me fall where it was muddy. And then when I started crying because of the mud, Nick said I was a crybaby. And this poor guy. While I was punching Nick for saying crybaby, my mom came back with the car and scolded me for being muddy and fighting. I'm having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, I told everybody. No one even answered. So then we went to the shoe store to buy some sneakers. Anthony chose white ones with blue stripes. Nick chose red ones with white stripes. I chose blue ones with red stripes, but then the shoe man said we're all sold out. They made me buy plain old white ones, but they can't make me wear them. Too true. When we picked up my dad at his office, he said I couldn't play with his copying machine, but I forgot. He also said to watch out for the books on his desk, and I was careful as could be except for my elbow. He also said don't fool around with his phone, but I think I called Australia. My dad says please don't pick him up anymore. It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Oh, hi, Joe Gorman. There were lima beans for dinner, and I hate limas. There was kissing on TV, and I hate kissing. My bath was too hot. I got soap in my eyes. My marble went down the drain. I had to wear my railroad train pajamas. I hate my railroad train pajamas. When I went to bed, Nick took back the pillow he said I could keep. And the Mickey Mouse nightlight burned out, and I bit my tongue. The cat wants to sleep with Anthony, not me. It has been a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. My mom says some days are like that, even in Australia. So if you are considering a career in children's therapy, do you want to talk with this kid? I so want to talk with this kid. This is so much of what children's therapy actually is talking to the Alexanders. And boy, they do have some rough days sometimes, don't they? An oldie but a goodie, tested by, in the year of our Lord 2023, kindergartners still like this book, The Magic School Bus Inside the Human Body by Joanna Cole, illustrated by Bruce Degan. Miss Frizzle. Ooh, yeah. Hot illustrations. The author and illustrator wished to thank Dr. Arnold J. Caput, Associate Professor of Pediatrics, Director, Division of Child Development, Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, for his help in preparing the book. Oh boy. It all began when Miss Frizzle showed our class a film strip about the human body. We knew trouble was about to start because we knew Miss Frizzle was the strangest teacher in school. The very next day, the Frizz made us do an experiment on our own bodies. Then she announced that we were going on a class trip to the Science Museum. We were going to see an exhibit about how our bodies get energy from the food we eat. The trip started out like any other trip. We rode to the museum in the old school bus. Along the way, we stopped at a park for lunch. When it was time to go, everyone got back on the bus. Everyone but Arnold. He was still at the picnic table, daydreaming and eating a pack of cheesy wheezies. Not cheesy wheezies. Not the cheesy wheezies. I'm so excited. What do you think is going to happen next? Hurry up, Arnold, called Mrs. Frizzle. She reached for the ignition key, but instead pushed a strange little button nearby. At once, we started shrinking and spinning through the air. From inside, we couldn't see what was happening. All we knew was that we landed suddenly, and then we were going down a dark tunnel. We had no idea where we were. But as usual, Miss Frizzle knew. She said we were inside a human body, to the tube that leads from the throat to the stomach. Most of us were too upset about leaving Arnold behind to pay much attention. Ooh, ooh, ooh. We are now passing into the stomach, said Mrs. Frizzle. It wasn't exactly quiet in there. The walls of the stomach moved in and out, churning and mashing the food into a thick liquid. The bus was turning round and round, and digestive juice splashed the windows. Now we knew how it felt to be a hamburger. Mrs. Frizzle drove to the bottom of the stomach. We'll drive through this opening to the small intestine, she said. Here's Arnold. I don't feel so good. Maybe it's something I ate. There's cheesy wheezies. There's a context clue. The small intestine was a coiled up, hollow tube. The inner walls of the tube were covered with tiny fingers called villi. In the villi are tiny blood vessels. Food molecules are taken into these blood vessels, said Mrs. Frizzle. Once the food is in the blood, it can travel all over the body. We felt ourselves getting even smaller, and Mrs. Frizzle started driving into one of the villi. She was going straight into a blood vessel. Ooh. Class, the bus is following the path of the food molecules into the blood. Now we were in the blood, but it did not look red. Blood is not just a red liquid, explained Ms. Frizzle. Blood is made of cells floating in a clear fluid. These cells look like red rubber saucers, someone called out. Those are red blood cells, Mrs. Frizzle said. Red blood cells carry oxygen from the lungs to all the cells of the body. Here and there, a white blood cell was busy destroying disease germs. They're really little. I don't think I knew that. White blood cells are like soldiers protecting your body from enemies, said Mrs. Frizzle. Looking back, we saw a white blood cell chasing the bus. That's a bigger one. We'll be safer with the red blood cells, kids, said Miss Frizzle. She reached for the handle that controlled the bus's doors. Don't do it, we cried. But when did Miss Frizzle ever listen? The doors of the bus flew open. We were swept out of the bus and into the bloodstream. Everybody hitch a ride, called the Frizz. Each kid grabbed a red blood cell as it went by. Our last glimpse of the bus was when it went into another blood cell, with the white blood cell right behind it. They're grabbing on like saucers to escape. Meanwhile, oh my gosh, I'm lost. Don't panic. This poor kid. This is so the 80s. This is definitely a story that takes place in the 80s because this kid's alone in the park. Frizz, your heart is a pump. Okay, the next thing we knew, they're in the blood vessels, so they're taking a vein back to the heart. We had flowed into the heart. Inside the heart are 4 hollow spaces called chambers, said Miss F. Each chamber is a little pump. The 2 chambers on the right side of the heart took in used blood from the body and pumped it to the lungs. In the lungs, the red cells picked up fresh oxygen. It really did be like that. My heart is pounding. Take a breath. You'll be okay. Okay. From the lungs, our red blood cells carried us back to the heart. This time we were on the left side of the heart, the side that pumps fresh blood back to the body again. In medical terms, if you're looking at me and my right and your left are all switched up, in medical terms, when they say left, they mean the patient's left, so left side of the heart. the side that pumps fresh blood back to the body again. Kids, it looks as if these red blood cells are on their way back to the brain, she said. Great place. When we reach the brain, we let go of our red blood cells and squeeze out of the blood vessel. It was hard to believe that this wrinkled gray blob was the control center of the body. Miss Frizzle said the brain is made of billions of busy nerve cells. They are constantly sending and receiving messages from eyes, ears, muscles, and other parts of the body. If you want to get this book from your local library, there's all kinds of other context stuff going on in every single one. So here on the brain, we have the speech center is labeled, hearing center, motor center, touch center, vision center. So exciting. If you have a kiddo who's interested in the brain or worried about what's going on in their body, this is such a great book to ask questions about and touch and see all the pages over and over. Okay. We left the head by climbing down the bones of the spine. Here. Inside the bones was a spinal cord, a thick bundle of nerve cells stretching from the brain. Smaller bundles of nerve cells branched out from each side of the spinal cord. These carried nerve messages to all the parts of the body. We followed some nerves that went into the leg muscles. The leg muscles were working hard. They needed a lot of energy. They used up a lot of food and oxygen from the blood. The heart was beating faster to carry fresh blood to the muscle cells. We entered a nearby blood vessel. The blood was moving so fast. We were afraid we would lose each other. But at that moment, the school bus floated by. What a relief. We jumped on and went up through the heart and lungs again, just the way we went before. When we emerged from the bloodstream, we were in a huge open space. Where are we? Asked a kid. Miss Frizzle explained to children. This is the nasal cavity. What? We asked. The inside of the nose, said the Frizz. Suddenly we heard a deafening noise. It sounded like ah, ah. There's the mouth. There's the bus. Here's the nasal cavity. I think I'm going to sneeze. Then we heard choo. Gross. Okay. A tremendous blast of air hit the bus full force. We flew forward, spinning around and around. We were going so fast we couldn't see anything, but we could tell we were getting bigger, and then thud, we landed. There we were back at school, and there was Arnold in the school parking lot blowing his nose. Arnold, we said, the trip was amazing. You should have been there. Where were you? Back in the classroom, it was business as usual. Miss Frizzle made us draw a chart of the human body for the bulletin board. At last, everything was quiet in Miss Frizzle's class. Everything, of course, except her dress. And there's definitely, in this day and age, the year of our Lord 2024, Miss Frizzle dresses for sale on the internet. There's a true or false test at the end of the book that you can go through. So this is one that is fantastic for kids who have any kind of dissociation symptoms going on. So dissociation is when we don't really feel like we're here. Derealization, depersonalization, kids who have daytime wedding accidents, kids who have trouble transitioning from one activity to the next, kids who have panic at bedtime, kids who have nighttime bedwetting. Like, these are all symptoms of stress that are going on. So if I'm going to teach progressive muscle relaxation or any kind of grounding techniques to adults, I can say to them, let's visualize and talk about different parts of the body. But for kids and for people who are trauma survivors, we want them to understand their bodies. This is a lovely illustration. This gives us a shared conceptualization when I'm talking with a kid about visualizing their brain, thinking about their heart pumping. For somebody whose heart pumping has been a sign of panic attacks, it's really nice to depathologize and help them understand that your heart is beating faster because it's supposed to, because that's the way it was designed to do. So if you'd like to learn lots and lots of resources and therapy techniques, you can always go to wellnesscleveland.vip and sign up for my newsletter. You can also sign up for individual supervision. You can do a consult and see if you want to meet with me for a short period of time to do some specific supervision about therapy techniques for how would you use this book with an 18-year-old? How would you use it with a 15-year-old? How would you use it with an 11-year-old? How would you use it with a 4-year-old? Because there's very different interventions. I could use this as an intervention in family therapy when we're talking about family grounding techniques. And family check-ins and what's the shared language, because it's really nice. John Hopkins approved medical language in here, lovely illustrations. For me, they're kind of gross, which you can tell, and your kids can tell when you're reading. So it's totally fine to stop and be like, gross, icky. I don't want to climb on the brain. That sounds so sticky to me. This one's a little sweeter. A story for a small bear. This is from the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. Dolly Parton sends free books to so many things that they'd rather not talk about. Story for a Small Bear by Alice B. McGinty and Richard Jones. When a late autumn wind, When a late autumn wind swirled into their den after noontime nap, Small Bear shivered. Brr. I smell frost in the air, Mama said. Tonight we'll start our winter slumber. Small Bear snuggled close. Will you tell me stories before we sleep? She asked. I'd love that, Mama said, but there's work to finish first. If you help, no dilly, no dally, then we'll have time for stories. Small Bear got right to work. With the sun shining high, she helped Mama gather sprigs of spruce to make a soft, warm nest. As Small Bear raked the forest floor, she came upon her favorite spot, the cozy hole in the spruce tree. She rubbed her nose in the sweet-smelling wood. She scratched her back. She could dilly and dally here forever. This is a great story to read when you are dillying and dallying. But then a gust of frigid air ruffled her fur, and a Small Bear shuddered. She did not like cold, not at all. Small Bear thought of Mama nearby. No dilly, she told herself, no dally. Wind was biting, winter knocking, and she had to save time for stories. Goodbye, hole, said Small Bear, and she carried the sprigs back to line her winter bed. As the sun drifted slowly across the sky, Small Bear and Mama lumbered to the river to bathe. Small Bear tumbled into the clear, cool water and shimmied until all the dirt had been washed from her fur. She splished and splashed. No dilly, she knew that's what Mama would say. Still, she rolled and wriggled and played some more. No dally, Small Bear thought, but it was so hard to leave. What could she do? Wind was biting, winter knocking, and she had to save time for stories. Finally, firmly, Small Bear waded to shore. Goodbye, river, she said. She shook herself dry. Mama, Small Bear called. Where are you, Mama? At last, Small Bear saw her and ran to meet her by the berry grove. Late day sunshine warmed them as they munched on berries juicy and red. Then Small Bear saw acorns high above. Up, up, up she climbed, one branch to another, and ate acorn after acorn. She looked out from the branches. Ah, she could climb forever. But now the sun began to curve in sunset. No dilly, Small Bear reminded herself. Still, she reached for a particularly plump acorn. No dally, Small Bear said. But how could she leave? The forest was full of food and adventure. Suddenly, though, Small Bear shivered. Brr. Sun was setting. Wind was biting. Winter knocking, and she had to save time for stories. Small Bear knew what to do. Goodbye, trees, she said, and down she scrambled. Mama, she called. She scampered between bushes, scurried over rocks. Mama, Mama. Finally, Small Bear saw her lumbering near the mulberry trees. Here I am, Mama, she said. And together, they started the path together. And together, they started down the path toward home. Back in their den, warm and clean and fed, Small Bear and her mama nestled down into their spruce bough nest. Did I save enough time for stories? Small Bear asked. You did, Mama answered and pulled her close. In a deep, rumbling voice, Mama began. Once there lived a small bear who loved to play. Her mama watched as she scratched in her cozy hole. No dilly, and splashed in her cool stream. No dally, and adventured in the tall, tall trees. Would she save time for stories? Small Bear listened, content, because she knew how this story would end. And as the first snowflakes of winter floated down outside, she drifted off to sleep. The end. So this is a lovely story that kids, when they pick it, it's usually because they're delaying something they don't want to do. And I say, do you want to do this skill practice or do we want to read another story while we color? And this is one that gets picked quite a bit. I love the theme that there is a kiddo who knows about dillying and dallying and also has room to wonder about the world and is able to regulate and pull themselves out of play and get going. So, I mean, kids just love this one, and I love this for them. Do we have time for one more? Ooh, I don't think we have time for one more, which means you're going to have to join me again. You can subscribe. I do read live with Wellness Cleveland on Monday and Tuesday evenings. And these are just little asides that I put in when I have client cancellations and a sudden openness in my schedule. So I hope you've enjoyed today, and join me at wellnesscleveland.vip if you want some personalized social work or human services training and education.